Hey guys, it's Jay, here with another review video. Before the review begins, I'd like to ask if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and share with others. Without further ado, on to the vid. To start this video off, I want to look at something Sonia says at the beginning of the episode. And the reason that I'm putting this in the Konos section is because it relates more to him and who he serves. Sonia says Thanatos' methods require micro-tactics and that he aims to destabilize nations. This is very important, and it provides a way for Thanatos to start taking control of the planet. If Thanatos is able to take out leaders of nations, he can directly show them how much power he has, as well as Code's inability to do anything against him. This would lead to the remaining governing party of those nations to ally with Thanatos as opposed to Code, which would only add to his control and power, as all he really needs from these nations is strong Kimyos who will side with him, and if none of them do, he can use them along with the humans and weaker Kimyos as fuel for his own strength. This may be the most important aspect of Thanatos' plan, as being a ruling party in a nation's government allows him legal liberty to do as he pleases, and could even allow him to start radiating whole nations to make them completely uninhabitable by humans, further starting the process of creating a world only for Kimyos. Now we can start to take a look at Konos himself, and I want to begin by understanding why Sonia classified Konos as a sentinel. This likely comes from Konos' observable regeneration, and this trait has really only been used by sentinels. The first being Goro, aka the Iron Gaki, who we see lose an arm to Andrea, but regrows it perfectly within seconds. This is also true when Shay hits him with a Tomas that blows a hole in his shoulder, but that injury heals nearly instantly. Though Kevin is also a sentinel, the second one we see in action would actually be Lewis, who we see can heal from Veil's attacks. These two characters have forms of regeneration that allows them to be unkillable, which are things I would say are synonymous with those who are sentinels. And this would apply to Konos as well, as his regeneration is like and even better than Goro's, as he can also restore inorganic material in the form of his clothing. Something that's important to note is that one of the soldiers says regeneration costs chi. This makes sense as Lewis's regeneration costs chi as well, with Veil mentioning Lewis can barely phase through his attacks, and Lewis says he was conserving his chi, implying phasing through attacks costs chi. This should mean the way to defeat immortal types of characters is to run their chi down so they don't have enough chi to regenerate with. This is why these soldiers are focusing fire on an area that would destroy most of Konos' arm, so his chi would be forced to regenerate more, as opposed to regenerating a smaller area that would cost less chi. Now, being a sentinel would not allow you to hide your chi, as Andrea, upon beating Goro in episode 87, notes that he has chi akin to Leo's, which means she can sense it, and Veil makes multiple comments on Lewis's chi, with the most important coming from episode 138, where he says Lewis's chi is leaking through every gap, meaning he can sense Lewis's chi as well. But both Abijah and now Sonia have made comments on not being able to sense Konos' chi, with Abijah going further and saying he hid his very soul. This would have to be an innate ability Konos possesses, but how or why is currently undeterminable, as his actual talent hasn't even been revealed yet. This brings me to the point of Konos potentially having more than one talent. If Konos' ability to hide his soul comes from the talent he has, it wouldn't make the most sense for said ability to come from a haste talent, which is the type of talent Sonia guessed he could have based on his speed near the end of the episode. This would mean Konos has a talent that lets him hide the presence of his soul as well as increase his speed. This would also add to the Child Gaki's comment of Konos being Veil's greatest creation, as he could have made a Kimyo strong enough to house multiple strong talents, which would make him the perfected version of what a Titan was when we were first introduced to them. It's also just as possible to say this is just Konos' raw speed that he has without the need for a second talent. Looking towards what the Child Gaki says, he refers to Konos as a beast, with that word being bolded to imply it's something of relevance. The word beast has a couple definitions that would apply to Konos, the first being an animal that is not a human being, and the second being an animal that is under human control. While Kimyos aren't human, they do technically fall under the definition of human, which is a bipedal primate mammal, and most Kimyos we've seen could be classified as such. The first definition would apply to Konos, as Sonia says he's clearly not human, which could make him an animal of sorts. And while Brent did say in the past that animals can't have talents, if genetic modification plays a factor, then adding human DNA to Konos would allow him to possess a talent, making that past point no longer applicable. Faceless also notes that Konos acts like a primate, maybe like that of a gorilla, as his appearance is intimidating, but he himself is more passive until threatened. The way his feet are drawn would only add to this point as well. Going back to my original point, Konos being depicted as more of an animal as opposed to a human outright would help him fall into the second definition of beast, as he would be an animal that is under Veil's control. Faceless also points out that these animal-like behaviors do not mean he has a lack of intelligence, as he directly created an opening so he could attack Sonia, which means he was observing and understanding how she moves and fights. And the more informative moment likely came from him almost attacking Sonia the first time about halfway through the episode. Now we can take a look at Sonia, as this episode helps better illustrate the ways her talent can be applied. At the start of the episode, she stabs 2 arrows into Konos' leg that burst into massive roots. This is for the purpose of trying to immobilize Konos, with the roots coming directly from his leg, but also wrapping around him to a certain degree. She does this again with a much larger arrow she makes, showing she can control the actual size of her arrows. And with this, we see Konos actively trying to break free, which means the roots are indeed binding him to a certain degree and keeping him in place. With Sonia showing she can spawn and control the roots for binding, she also shows the roots can be coiled together to form a wall of protection, which she uses to keep Konos separated from the KCG agents. Moving away from defense and support uses and more towards offense, Sonia shows twice she can damage a person essentially from the inside out, as she shoots Konos with arrows that burst into pure thorn roots. The first one rips through Konos' torso, but the second one shows true damage as it tears through his entire shoulder area, and very clearly takes off his entire left arm. This means that if Sonia can get an arrow into you, she can damage you no matter what. Sonia also does something I didn't expect, and that's being able to form the wood of the elm trees from just seeds and not seed arrows. She does perform a good reactionary feat with them, as she's able to create them and the subsequent wood before she could be hit by Konos. And this to some capacity shows she can react to near point blank attacks, even when they catch her slightly off guard. Now this should imply that the seeds are made first and then shaped into arrowheads, but this begs the question of if she can create wood from these seeds, could she also swap places with them? If so, this would make the tactic I brought up last week even more viable, as she wouldn't need to create an arrow and ensure it's planted before swapping the way she does multiple times in this episode, but could easily scatter seeds throughout the battlefield and swap whenever she needs to and to wherever they are. With all of that shown and understood, I feel as though it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say the way she uses her tree's roots also fits into the warp typing, as warp types distort matter, space, and time, and the definition of distort can be to twist out of natural, normal, or original shape or condition. And since her elm tree constructs are in their natural shapes, you could say it helps put her talent in the warp category. Now that we've looked more at Sonia's application of her talent, I want to talk about her other arrows. As we saw, she has 2 different types of trick arrows. One that can spray smoke from it, which obstructs her opponent's view and helps aid in her fighting style, as it allows her to plant one of her own arrows for swapping. The other would be the explosion tipped arrows. You could also imply based on what she says that she also has arrows coated in chi, designed to bypass a Kimyo's rock armor technique. If that's true, in my opinion, those arrows would be quite redundant for her to use, as she should already have the attack potency needed to get through an opponent's rock armor by virtue of her having god tier levels of chi, as well as her arrows being piercing damage as opposed to blunt force. And we've seen that piercing damage works well against the rock armor technique, as Jose could pierce through Shay's hand, but couldn't do any damage with his explosives, and Jin can pierce through Thanatos' heart, but couldn't do anything with his slashes. I feel like it's okay to say Konos has access to the rock armor technique, and the reason the soldiers can damage him is because they have Kimyo armor piercing rounds, and this would make sense as the grenade that was thrown at him last episode as well as the light rods had no effect on him. So if Konos has rock armor, Sonia has already gotten through it multiple times, so arrows designed to do that very thing are useless. This brings me to the explosive arrows, which are also quite redundant in my opinion, as while they have done more damage than a normal grenade, they still aren't on par with the thorn arrows Sonia has hit Konos with. This essentially makes those arrows a wasted resource for Sonia specifically, as her kit is already allowing her to do what those arrows are supposed to. Now, something I find interesting about Sonia in this episode is that she is actively reporting the data and understanding of Konos 2 code. It feels as though this may be something she does regularly, as when we see her in episode 108, she also has the headset on. This could mean Kofi and Sonia are often sent on missions that would require information to be sent back to code, allowing them to actively update the information on the moon base. To end this off, Kofi will be entering the fight as of the next episode, and this sort of later engagement does help prove that the royals will engage in battle before their god tier, though Sonia and Kofi's relationship as well as the way Kofi's talent works makes this even more true. I'm interested to see what Kofi will do and if the child Gaki will engage as a result. I'd also like to reiterate how redundant the Titan Tech arrows are for Sonia, and others will likely agree that Titan Tech should be the way humans and lower level Kimyos can be strong and remain relevant, as like I said, a Kimyo of Sonia's caliber should not need anything of the sort, unless it was to help control her talent like that of Pandor and his code tech, but that's clearly not the case, and seemingly isn't for the other god tier and royals. Now, outside of the Titan Tech, I do enjoy how this episode shows Sonia's overall skill, as she's not just good at using her talent in different situations, has great observatory skills as well. And lastly, I like to put a spotlight on Jack Wolfgang, who comments on Konos' healing, speed, and second mouth, and I'd like to focus on the last part. The shouting panel was something I didn't mention in the video as it didn't seem super relevant. However, I did not realize that the scream came from Konos' second mouth. This could add to the idea that he was genetically modified, as him being a gorilla-like creature would give him one mouth originally, and this could also add to him potentially having more than one talent, with the second mouth and its ability potentially being a talent-specific thing. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Let me know what your favorite part of the chapter was in the comments below, as well as how you feel about the things I mentioned throughout the video. Don't forget to read the actual episode for yourself, and be sure to like it as well. And I will see y'all in the next one.